for me is Penn State. So BetOnline has them set at 9.5 wins. I mean, I don't know how many Penn State games you watched last year. The few that I called, it was a snooze fest. Elite defense, probably national championship level defense a year ago, could do nothing on offense. They do bring in, I'm going to butcher his name, so let me look at it. The OC from Kansas. I'm going to butcher his name. Let me see it. Let me read it. Sorry, this is great podcasting here. Always prepared.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Andy Kotelnicki. Andy Kotelnicki comes in from Kansas. Note on them, they threw the ball a ton. They averaged over 15 yards of completion. But you know, for me, I think Kansas had a better quarterback in Jalen Daniels, rather than Drew Aller. And Drew Aller, 5-star guy, he has yet to live up to any sort of hype there. So for me, the concern is on offense, starting at the quarterback position. But they also lose 2 of their top pass catchers, Keandre Lambert-Smith transferring to Auburn, and the other Dante Cephas transferred out as well. So they're two top receivers out as well. But you know they're going to run the football. As we've seen in this era of college football, you can't win with defense. You've got to have an offense. You're going to have to put up points. The Big Ten is bigger. It's tougher now. They haven't been able to get over the hump in recent years past Michigan or Ohio State. Now they get to play USC in year 1. Running through their schedule, they go to West Virginia. Old rivalry game there. That'll be fun to watch. They host Bowling Green, Kent State, Illinois. They do host UCLA, and then they travel to USC on October 12th. We've talked a lot about that. October 12th. Yeah. That's I think the best week of college football all season. And then they travel to Wisconsin. They host Ohio State, host Washington, travel to Purdue. Purdue is a giant killer, giant slayer. They always have been. I think that nothing changes there. They go to Minnesota, which is a weird place to play, especially late in the year. The weather can get goofy, but you know they're used to that. They're used to playing in snow. And then they host Maryland to wrap up the season. I look at this schedule, guys. I see they'll be favored in most of these games. As Vegas, you know, clearly likes them sitting there at 9.5 wins. I would imagine they'd be favored on the road at West Virginia, favored against Bowling Green, Kent State, Illinois, UCLA. I'm interested to see what the line might be for USC and how these two teams start off their season. Because you know USC is going to put up a lot of points. Wisconsin, another one I'm interested to see. Can they go on the road? Will they be favored? I would expect them to be a short home underdog to Ohio State. They'll probably be favored against Washington, Purdue, Minnesota, and Maryland. So what is that? I said they'd be favored in 11 games, 10 games. Probably pretty likely. But, you know, even more than this 9.5 win total, Penn State is looking to win the Big Ten and get in the playoff. Anything short of that would be a disappointment. I even think, depending on how things play out, like if they beat Ohio State and they still don't win the Big Ten, that would be a major disappointment. Would really put a hamper on the season, on how people feel about them at the end of the season. So for them, it's really playoff or bust, and the Big Ten's going to be tough to win. It's going to be tough to be up there and tough to fight for that at-large spot. I don't know that 9 wins for Penn State, as tough as their schedule is, I don't think it gets there. So they miss out on the playoff. It's a huge disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, they've kind of been a team that's felt like they've underachieved every single year. They win the games they're supposed to, but they constantly lose the big ones, the ones they can't get over the hump. That's kind of been the knock, I guess you could say, on James Franklin. I still think he's a really, really good coach. But I do believe that when you look at that schedule, and let's go back to this. I want to talk about the schedule. I want to talk about a couple things that you did mention and hint at. When I look at the schedule, you have to you have a stretch where you're going to play at USC, at Wisconsin, home against Ohio State, home against Washington. You could lose all 4 of those games. Like those are 4 games that you could lose. I still think Washington's be pretty good. They're going to be led by a veteran in Will Rogers, who's going to be able to really, really open it up for them. So I don't think that game's necessarily a pushover in the sense. Now can they win it? Of course they can. They could win the game. But Penn State, I mean, if you're talking about an over-under of 9.5, Will, if this was at 8.5, I'd feel more comfortable. That's where I'd feel more
Me too.
comfortable with an 8.5 line. But when I look at this schedule, I think that they could start the season. I think they could beat West. Well, they'll beat West Virginia. That's just a take there. I think they could start the season 4-0 heading into UCLA. If you could beat UCLA, you go 5-0. All you need is 5 more. You need 5 more wins. I can't pencil in 5 more wins. I mean, Minnesota and Maryland, okay. Purdue, but you're gonna have to knock off. You're gonna have to go win a big game, and the knock against James Franklin is they have not done that consistently enough in the Big Ten. Now the Big Ten gets harder, like I mentioned there with Washington, USC. Regardless of what you think about their defense, they're going to be able to air it out, and they're going to be able to throw the ball. Lincoln Riley's a good quarterback. I'll be talking about them, or a good quarterback's coach. He's got a good quarterback. I'll be talking about them a little bit later on. And then just kind of to add here, look, you lose a lot on your offensive line, including a first rounder in Olu Fashanu. That hurts big time. They did bring in Julian Fleming, I believe, the Ohio State transfer, but it's kind of an untapped potential thing. Like the kid's supposed to be really good, never realized it.
Had a really good year last year, but again, he was buried down on that depth chart. Their transfer class, we talk about what they lost. They bring in one receiver, even though they lost 2 big time receivers. So to me, still a net loss there. We haven't seen a lot, further down the depth chart. Amari Evans, Mekhi Flowers, haven't seen them too much. The offensive line, they did bolster that in the transfer portal, bring in Nolan Rucci, a junior, will likely start for them at tackle. And then on defense, they really only brought in one starter, and it was A.J. Harris transferring out from Georgia. So, but their defense, it was already good. Their overall transfer portal ranking, according to 24/7, was at 60. So, I don't, unless they're developed, which this staff has shown they can develop some talent. They've done really good, especially at the running back position. They're going to be led by Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, 2 really, really good tailbacks. This coaching staff has shown they can develop, but they didn't add a ton, and they probably don't feel like they need to, but for me, I don't think it's enough. Looking at what Ohio State brought in, I don't think it's enough.
Yeah. And I'll even add this too. I mean, Ralph talked about this last night when he talked about Duke. You lose Manny Diaz. You do bring in Tom Allen, who's going to be your defensive coordinator this year. But is there going to be a drop off?
There's a drop off.
You saw what Tom Allen just got through doing at Indiana. Yeah.
I mean,
sure, he's going to have a lot more talent.
Some guys are just not made to be head coaches. Some guys are just better coordinators. I think Tom Allen's a better coordinator. He's not better than Manny Diaz.
Yeah, he's going to have a lot better players with Penn State than he did at Indiana, but yikes.
Gavin says, who? Ralph, your thoughts, though. Penn State over under 9.5 wins. I think Will and I both agree. It feels kind of 8.5 would be, to me, where I would set it. If we had the Crowded Booth book, that's where I'd set it.
So last year I got to watch them play against Ole Miss in the bowl game. Now, they weren't their full team. A lot of guys, opted out. But still, they were almost a complete team. And at first, it looked like they were about to, they looked like they hit them right in the mouth. And I was like, man, this Penn State team looks really good in person. Drew Aller looks great. And then once Ole Miss figured them out, it was a blowout. I mean, I felt like their defense was getting picked off one by one. Ole Miss just used everyone they had in their offensive playbook just to take advantage. I mean, even their tight end, I can't even think of his name at the time right now, who had like 3 touchdowns all year, went out for like 10 catches for 180 yards.
Scoring or something like that?
Yes. I mean, the dude had he had done nothing all year but just be a blocking tight end and then had the best game of his entire career. I mean, Ole Miss found ways to pick apart their defense. I think it's the same thing that's going to happen this year. I don't think Tom Allen's really up to the standard of coaching at this level as a defense coordinator that Penn State wants. Will's correct, though. He does have better players now. I think he's a good coach, but I think Manny Diaz, or you go from Manny Diaz to Tom Allen, it's a drop-off. So.
I agree. I do agree with you, Ralph. I think that there's going to be a little bit of a drop-off. We saw at times last year that Drew Aller just wasn't explosive enough. And highly touted, like Will said, there are just certain – we talked about this last night. Like, the quarterback position determines a lot. They've got talent. Will talked about what they brought in. We don't feel like it's enough. So that means that Drew Aller's really going to have to play like a top 10 quarterback that a lot of people think his potential is to be a top 10 quarterback in college football. But if it's just the same so-so, like, they got to throw the ball down the field. Like that was one of the craziest things. They barely threw the ball down the field and they had one of the lowest explosive play rates in the Big Ten last season.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Drew Aller's extremely talented. I mean, the guy came in, was even talked about competing for a starting job as a true freshman, and played last year, did really good. I mean, he wasn't like spectacular, but he did the job. That's what he was. He's just doing the job. And and for what their offense was last year, they relied solely on the defense to make plays for them and keep them in games. And obviously, look at the Ohio State game last year; they had a chance to win. If Drew Aller is 90% better in that game, not even 100%, just 90% better, they win that game easily. They had Ohio State on the ropes early in the game and could have put it away easily, but they just could not get the offense working whatsoever. And I just feel like this year's been the same thing. I don't think they brought in enough to really compete with Ohio State or even Michigan or you got Oregon and USC in the conference. So you didn't do enough to get better. They're still a good team. 8 wins is achievable. Even 9 wins is achievable. They're not going over that. They're not going over 9 though.
Well, and then you talk about this. If you get to 9 wins, and I'll throw it back to you, Will. The conversation is does a 9-3 Penn State get in the playoff? 9-3 non-Big Ten title appearance.
No,
we're going to have some fun resumes to look at in December.
Who are the 3 losses? And looking at their schedule, I mean, Ohio State would be their best loss. I don't think they can. I mean, they've got to win 10, and where they are as a program, anything less than the playoffs is a disappointment, and probably even not even making the Big Ten title game is a disappointment.
Yeah,
they brought back one of the best and deepest rosters in the Big Ten. So anything less would be a huge disappointment. And I don't know that they get there.
What'd you say?
When's the last time that Penn State competed in a Big Ten championship game? Do we know?
2000. They won it. When was that? 16, 15, and they missed the playoff.
Was that year they played in the Rose Bowl game and it was it was big. It was Penn State USC. It was Sam. Was it Sam Darnold?
Sam Darnold against Trace McSorley, I think.
So that was 2015.
So
something like that. Well, Dr. Bob says
they had 2 losses. That's what kept him out.
Penn State needs to go 10-2 to get to the playoffs, and I think you're even a fringe team then, depending on what happens else in the conference. I don't think you can
and the rest of the country
10-2 Penn State. Yeah, I don't think you can pencil in a 10-2 Penn State team to be in the playoffs, but I think that's the bare minimum. You cannot go 9-3. So that's the Penn State Indy Lions. I will say this. I like James Franklin. I like the program they have up there. I want to see them succeed. I'm ready for them to get over the hump. Penn State has a lot of Georgia Mark Richt vibes to me. Team that just kind of second fiddle to conference tier 2, but has not been able to really get over that hump necessarily. So we'll see.
It doesn't feel like Sunday school up there.
No, I do agree. Clayton says VT at NC State. We got a lot of ACC conversation happening, and I don't think any of us have ACC teams on the docket here tonight. So that's still okay. Okay, let's okay, yeah, there we go. I'm guessing he's saying Rutgers is going to sneak in the Big Ten Conference Championship game after looking at the schedules. Ohio State's going to get left out. That's A+ commenting you have on this show. You can't get anywhere else. Let's move on. Will goes Penn State under 9.5 wins. Book it, Dr. Bob. If you weren't here last night, I don't think you were. This is unofficial spring training, summer workouts of the Excel spreadsheet. So this is not official. Nothing's in pen here tonight. Dr. Bob immediately just got banned from the show.
You have no idea how happy that would make me, Dr. Bob. Iowa Rutgers in the Big Ten Championship.
Scarlet Knights.
Put it in my veins.
Oh, man.
Penn State over under 9.5 wins. All right, Ralph.